But I definitely would qualify for being on Zepbound or Wegovy if I wanted to. However, I have decided...
Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Today we are going to be talking about a video that was uploaded by Beatrice Caruso. Now, if you're not familiar with Beatrice, Beatrice has been making like weight loss content on YouTube for a few years now. She does a lot of vlog content, kind of sharing her life. And so, you know, we've talked about her a few times. It's been quite a long time since I've mentioned her in a video, but I mean, the basis of her channel is that she's been trying to lose weight and she's been documenting that the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of that. And she recently uploaded a video where she is talking about the maybe desire to do Ozempic or another type of weight loss medication that's been all over the place. And I felt like she did a pretty good job of explaining her reasoning why or why not she doesn't want to take it, and kind of just an overview of these medications and how they have become so popular. It's very interesting now being an influencer on social media that has anything to do with weight loss, whether you are trying to lose weight, you have lost weight, you lost weight in the past, gained some of it back. You almost have to answer this question at some point. It's almost like a prerequisite at this point. It's like you have to talk about it. And she kind of goes into that. So this is the video that we're going to be talking about. Am I going to try Ozempic, Wegovy, or Zepbound? And I'm just going to kind of let her share her thoughts and tell her and, you know, just kind of share how I feel about it.
But we're here to talk about the elephant in the room. And so I guess like it's not really an elephant in the room because it's not really this big thing that no one's talking about. It's a big thing that everybody is talking about. You can't get away from it. We're here to talk about Ozempic, ladies. As an obese person on the internet that has tried and failed to lose weight and keep it off publicly for the past 4 years, of course, it has been asked what I feel about this and if I would consider taking it. So this is...
Yeah, and so that's like, you know what I said. It's like you almost feel like you have to talk about it, because if you don't talk about it, I feel like if you don't talk about it, people just assume that you're on it, especially if you're losing weight. And so it's like you almost feel like you have to speak about it at this point.
What this is right now. Here's the disclaimers. Not a doctor, not a medical professional, nowhere near the pharmaceutical industry. Don't have any knowledge about that other than what I can Google. This is just meant to like be a casual conversation between friends, one of which who has considered taking this medication, and just kind of like giving you the lowdown. And I'm definitely not here to be shaming anybody for wanting to take these medications, taking these medications, because believe me, I know the grind. I know the struggle is real, and so if anybody finds success on whether it's keto, carnivore diet, going vegan, taking Ozempic, gastric bypass, whatever it is, if someone finds success doing it and keeping off the weight, dude, round of applause. Cheers to you. Like, bitch, it's hard out there. And my mission objective is not to say one way or the other is better. I'm just here to like mull over what I decided for myself and why. Because
I think that the world would be a significantly better place if most people kind of took that way of thinking into most things. Sadly, a lot of people that do those things that she kind of mentioned turn into almost zealots for that thing. And like, they're like, oh, this is the best thing and everyone has to do this. And if you don't do this, you're an idiot and you're wrong and you're a failure. And so I think that having this kind of mindset about it is a good thing. And so I appreciate that from her for sure.
I have been spiraling for like the past 2 weeks, researching all of this stuff and coming ultimately to a decision for myself. So I'm just going to kind of go through like why I decided what I decided. I did make like kind of a lighthearted joke back in January on one of my shorts where I was like lifting weights in this like not even a minute long video. And I said something about like, the goal here is to build muscle. This isn't Ozempic or whatever. Just like kind of a nod at one of the very real symptoms of this medication, because it does not discern between fat and muscle. And so as a result, a lot of people found themselves losing a significant amount of lean muscle mass, which not ideal for me personally. With weight loss in general, there is...
I'm curious if with that information, if it is specifically the drugs that are making that happen, or if it's more so the rate at the weight loss, because I think a lot of people, when they get on these weight loss medications, the rate of their weight loss kind of speeds up more than maybe is normal, or they haven't been expecting or experiencing. And from what I understand, the rate of the weight loss, if you're losing weight quickly, a lot of times you will be losing muscle. It's a big reason why it's recommended not to lose too much weight too fast, right? Because you end up losing quote unquote good weight, right? The muscle mass. So I wonder if there's a correlation, or if it really is like if you're on Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever, you do end up losing more muscle mass than someone that maybe is losing at the same rate as you, but they're not on these medications. I would be curious as to like what the information is on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Some muscle loss, it's just the way of the game, but it just seemed like there was just like a lot more with these medications. But we'll get into like all the side effects and pros and cons and all that stuff. But I just want to address that because people were like, medication shamer, and I was like, I thought that was pretty mild, but I guess
that's where you went wrong there. You assumed.
Yes, so was what Chris Rock said about Jada Pinkett Smith at the Oscars, and Will Smith also got up and slapped him, so you never can tell. So the first time I ever heard the word Ozempic uttered was back in January of this year, and it was like brought up in the form of articles where it was just basically saying that celebrities were taking this to get thinner, like a thin get thinner situation. As with anything that celebrities do, people emulate it, and this was causing a shortage in supply for the people who like really needed the medication, the people it was for, which is diabetics. How they addressed this was a name change. So there are two weekly injectable medications on the market. You got Ozempic and Wegovy. They're the same medication, but Wegovy is for weight loss. The Ozempic is reserved for people with diabetes. And then you have Mounjaro and Zepbound. The Zepbound is the weight loss one. Mounjaro is reserved for people with diabetes. For the sake and brevity of this video, I'm going to be referring to like the weight loss ones because that's what I would be using it for because I don't have diabetes. So both these drugs are lumped together because they both impact hormone pathways in the body that help.
Yeah, I mean, especially with this, I kind of do the same thing. Whenever I make a video about this, I'll usually just overall blanket term, I'll use Ozempic just because for most people, that's the thing that's out there the most. So when you say that, people know what you're talking about. And so I usually don't differentiate between each exactly one. Of course, there's slight differences, but for all intents and purposes, they kind of do the same thing in your body. And so it's easier when you're making a video to just kind of blanket statement all of them. So I can understand that kind of thinking.
Control blood sugar levels and help reduce appetite, which in turn leads to weight loss. However, they are different. Wegovy or Ozempic has been on the market and used for about 18 years, where Mounjaro, Zepbound, only 2. Wegovy is a single agonist affecting GLP-1. People are reporting total body weight reduction of about 14%, whereas Zepbound is a dual agonist, so it affects both GLP-1 and GIP. Zepbound is even more with about 20% total body weight reduction, and word on the street is because the capitalism is capitalizing, we're going to be seeing a third little piggy coming to market that will affect 3 hormone pathways. It's going to be called like 3G, G3, something like that, where the goal is 24% body weight reduction.
And then coming up is going to be one that affects 4, and it will be 50% body weight reduction. It's just going to keep going up.
And here's like the thing with these types of things, like it was crawling for a long time, and all of a sudden it's got legs and it is running full speed ahead, Usain Bolt. And ladies, I would be sitting here a dirty rat liar if I was telling you that I did not consider taking this. Like,
yeah,
it looks really appealing, not going to lie. And for someone who has struggled with trying to lose weight since they were 12 years old, and then being on the internet and doing it, and you would think that like having hundreds of people watching you would be a strong motivation to
nope, it's not.
lose the weight and keep it off. I did not find that the case. I'm not here to like make excuses about anything. I'm just sitting here telling you. Wow.
It's I've talked about this many times. I always say like if you're trying to lose weight, I usually don't recommend trying to make a YouTube channel / Instagram or about trying to kind of like gain followers because of it. Now, if you're gonna make an Instagram and it's literally just for like accountability and you're not trying to gain followers or like become an influencer, I think that's a little bit different. But when we're talking about like I make YouTube videos and I monetize those videos and those videos help pay my bills, right? I'm not saying that in a negative. I have no problem with it. It's what I do, right? But it comes with the host of other things that you have to deal with on top of, especially if you're struggling with losing weight. So it's already hard, right? Losing weight is already incredibly difficult. And then you're going to be dealing with, yes, you get a lot of positivity and people encouraging you, which is fantastic. And that's kind of the reason you do it, right? Because you are searching for people that are in the same boat as you that can, you can share those relationships, those experiences with. But it comes with a host of people saying, what you're doing is wrong. You should try this. You should try this. Why didn't you do that? And then there's threads about you. And then, it makes it more difficult. It just does, right? And so that's why I always say, like, I'm not saying you can't do it, but just understand what you're getting into when you go down that road, because it's definitely a lot to deal with.
While I was doing this research on this medication, I also did research in obesity, and I found statistics for the percentage of people who manage to get the weight off and keep it off, and the number is pretty sad. Something like 95% of people who have success losing about like 10% of their body weight end up gaining it back within 1 to 3 years.
So she says right here, so the 95% thing is probably a myth. I just saw it and spiraled instead of looking into it further. I appreciate the honesty. I can't find a definitive percentage. There's all these different percentages. I think no one knows, but the constant is majority of people gain it back. And that's true, but I am glad that she brought up the fact that this is a number that's you've thrown around a lot, especially in like the fat acceptance or fat activist kind of sphere. Basically, the reason I dislike it so much is that it's used as a reason as to why you shouldn't even try, and I just hate that. Like, I understand losing weight is incredibly hard. I get that. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And throwing around the 95% number as a fact, like 5%, that's it. 5% is still not zero, but it's not true. And it's frustrating because so many people have latched onto it and it's fact now. And so I hear people like, it's impossible to lose weight. Why would you try? And it just puts people in this mindset of it's impossible. I'm not even going to try. And it takes you out of the fight before you can even get into it. I hate it. This is besides the point, but I'm just very glad that she brought this up.
I have thought, like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why can't I stick to it? Just like all the shame involved in that, and then like publicizing it
Yeah.
to a point where like not only you know your shame, but like hundreds of other people know your shame, and
I mean, thousands, right? Hundreds of thousands.
berate you for it. Like, there are people making the assumption that, like, I was just, like, not getting fit because it would give me more views on YouTube, which is totally not the case. Like, this channel is dying, dead, not losing the weight.
That, I understand exactly where she's coming from. And if you're not someone that makes content in this sphere, I think it might be hard to understand that. But I have gotten people that have said the same thing to me about not getting loose skin surgery. So the reason I haven't gotten surgery is because I can make videos about loose skin and gain a lot of views. The fact of the matter is when I make a video about loose skin, it does not do super well. Like, it just doesn't. Like, there was a time when it, because it was so, like, no one really talked about it, it did. But it doesn't anymore. I've had the loose skin for 11 years. You really think that I've kept it for that long for YouTube views, when I guarantee if I were to do a loose skin series of me getting rid of the loose skin and how the process was, I'm sure that would do well. It's so annoying. People, again, and it's all of this stuff added together that makes all of this stuff just harder than if you weren't sharing that stuff. But again, as someone that puts this stuff online, you understand that that comes with risk, and that risk is people commenting on it, saying terrible things about you, whatever. It's a sad truth, right? It's a sad truth of putting content on.
Doesn't keep people around, it makes people lose faith in you. Mm. So while the statistic of the 95% of people were like me was like mildly helpful, like maybe for like a fraction of a second, then like this feeling of despair kind of took over, and girl, I spiraled.
Yeah.
I was like,
and that's what happens to a lot of people, and that's why I just that statistic is so frustrating, because people will see it and they'll be like, oh, that's the truth, and that explains why I can't lose weight, so I'm done trying. I hate it.
What the fuck? I started thinking about my own situation. I'm like, okay, I got the ADHD, I got the PCOS, I got anxiety and depression, and I have a binge eating disorder. What are my odds now of like actually being successful at this thing? So I was very heavily considering taking this once a week injectable medication that was seemingly the holy grail for my problems. Sorry, I had to change the battery pack. But here comes this like beacon of hope that's like not only this holy grail of like potential weight loss, right? But also people are reporting like the food noise just going away. And as someone who spends a good majority of the day thinking about food, thinking about their next meal, wanting their next meal to be perfect, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, I'm definitely someone who lives to eat rather than eats to live.
And I know exactly how that feels. And so I can understand, man, how tempting these medications can be when maybe you don't necessarily feel like you really need it, but like that thought of not having the food noise, like that's such a huge part of especially people that are incredibly overweight, right? Like there's just a lot of weight to lose. That's something that I would say almost everyone that is significantly overweight struggles with. It's the constant thought, what am I eating next? What can I have for lunch? What am I going to eat? I want to get a snack. Let's go. Like it's constant. And then when you're on a diet, it's even more, right? It's like, okay, I can't have that. Oh man, I really wish I could have this. And then, but I need to make this food. And that food's been in the fridge for a couple days. Should I even have that? I mean, it would be so much better if I just DoorDashed. It's not that big of a deal. It's just like that all the time, right? And so I can understand how enticing these medications can be and how helpful they can be as well. I'm not against them by any means. I just think that they are for a specific person. And I think one of the biggest problems with this is kind of going off, but I meant to bring it up earlier, is that, you know, she talked about how it has legs now. It's everywhere. And while that is a good thing, I feel like it also has become a bad thing because it's literally everywhere. Everywhere. I was with family yesterday, and there was someone in our group that works at one of these spas that just gives injections. And I didn't say anything about it, but I was just hearing that, and I was like, it's just crazy to me. And again, it's making it harder for people that really do need it, of course, but it's because it's everywhere. It has this extra stigma. People are almost embarrassed to say that they're taking it, and all of that stuff, in my opinion, all that stuff does is it makes it harder for the people that genuinely need it. Because like I said, I don't have a problem with people taking it, which, I mean, people can do whatever they want with their bodies, but like it makes me sad that so many people that I think genuinely can find help from it are almost like second guessing it because of the negative stigma it's garnered, because of just how, you know, it's on Hollywood and all these people are taking it that probably don't need to be taking it, right? And it's just like, do I really want to take this? Is this a shortcut? Is this everyone has to answer that question for themselves. But I feel like the ubiquity of it everywhere, I don't know if that's the right term, but how it's everywhere has almost soured it for a lot of people. And it's sad, in my opinion.
Even though I do think that I have a pretty good handle on the binge eating disorder thing, I haven't binged in over a year, but I still do think about food all of the time. There's still definitely that want sometimes when there's like an emotional trigger or whatever else to just full out gorge. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely like overeaten, but it's not the gorging, if that makes any sense. Anyways, so of course.
So in this next part of the video, she kind of goes over the negative side effects. We've talked about that enough. I feel like on this channel, I just feel like it's kind of dead space in this video for like the things that we've talked about. So we're going to go ahead and skip forward a little bit to where she talks a little bit more about her decision and what she decided to do.
But I definitely would qualify for being on Zepbound or Wegovy if I wanted to. However, I have decided, as enticing as it is, to not go that route. Even though it does have a lot of benefits and people have been like having like great success with it, here's what I see the scenario playing out for me as. I see myself getting on it, definitely having like the stomach issues, because I have stomach issues normally. I don't see myself skipping over that one. Not in my wildest dreams. Okay, and
that is a very, very common side effect. Like I would say that's the most common side effect, right? Is the GI issues.
I even see myself getting more severe side effects based on my track history and how my body betrays me at any chance it gets. I'm also really nervous about taking anything that would affect my hormones, based personally on having a very adverse reaction to ADHD medicine. When I got diagnosed with that, they bounced me around on a ton of different medications with a ton of different dosages within like the span of 3 months. And I believe that led to a mental breakdown, which put me in like this whole state of panic for like a month. I'm not 100% sure because, you know, real life doctors aren't like House. There's not 5 of them sitting around figuring out your medical mysteries, but it just coincides with what happened. And also I took my Vyvanse pill and immediately got like a little twinge of panic that like went away after 20 minutes, and I was like, that was weird. That's something that doesn't happen normally. Like, I'm prone to anxiety, but this was just like something different, something on a whole new level. But yeah, completely disrupted my life, and I'm still dealing with the effects of that. Not as bad, but yeah, it makes me super apprehensive to just try stuff out for funsies. I digress. But also, I would want to stay on this medication just until I lost the weight, which doesn't seem to be a thing. As far as like research shows, the people who get off of it gain the weight that they lost back, or at least the majority of it.
That's definitely a really big part, and I think it's really important that people kind of really take that into account and understand that. I think I understand how people can maybe think like, okay, I'll take this medication, I'll lose the weight, and then once I lose the weight, I'll probably have better habits and I'll be able to keep the weight off. And they're doing research, and it seems relatively promising that some people are able to keep the weight off, but for the majority of people, it's a chronic thing. You're going to be taking that medication if you want to keep the weight off for good. Now, that for some people, that might be completely fine. They don't have a problem with that. And again, that's your decision, and that's something that you can do. But I think it's really important to really think about the implications of that and understand this is something that would be necessary to take for a very extended period of time. And I think I just really worry about people that finally find something that works for them and then feel like either they can't afford it anymore, whatever, because it's not cheap, right? Or there's a supply, issue and they can't get it. Something, right? That's very common with this. That then it's really going to make them spiral because they thought they had control and it feels like that control has been ripped away from them. It's genuinely something that I think is important that we need to, hopefully we can get to a point where it's not, so you don't have to take it forever. But I really like the way that Beatrice is thinking about this and really thinking long term, because that's the goal. In my opinion, that should be the goal for anyone that's wanting to lose weight, is long term, or am I going to keep this off for good? And if you're just going to use these medications to lose the weight quickly and then I'll figure it out once I lose the weight, like that's clearly that's not what they are, the doctors and stuff that are prescribing this, that's not what their thoughts are. Their thoughts are you're going to be staying on this forever, right? Or for a very extended period of time. And so I think it's really important to always have that in the back of your head if you do decide to go down this road.
That would mean I would subject myself to the negative side effects of the medication, as well as still being obese and having all those negative side effects of obesity. So without staying on it for like the rest of my life, I don't know. I mean, like, the goal would be to like work on having a healthy relationship with food and finding healthier habits and stuff while being on the medication. But my whole thing is like, if I don't have the thoughts of food constantly, if I'm not getting the same dopamine hit from like eating that I normally do, because a big thing that they say is like it kind of alters your reward system in your brain, where like eating doesn't have the same effect as it did as far as like comfort eating and stuff like that. I just don't think that there would be much to work against. Whereas when I go off the medication, all that stuff would be back, right? And then it'd just be square one, where it'd be like me gaining the weight back because all of a sudden those things are present again.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know off the top of my head I'm not sure if they've even really done much research on like maybe food noise levels, from before ever taking in the medication and then maybe being on it for a while and then getting off of it. I don't even know how they would study that. I think that would be very, very interesting to see if there's any long-term effects of the food noise, which, a lot of people say is a huge help for them, has been hugely helpful. I wonder, I would hope that they are thinking about doing those kinds of studies, because I really would be curious to see if there's any sort of, even if it's a 10% reduction in food noise or whatever, that could be helpful for long term, which is important. But I think Beatrice is looking at this in a way that I respect a lot. Really, really thinking about it instead of just, I think a lot of people that have been struggling with their weight, you have this emotional response where you just want to lose the weight, and it's almost like you'll accept anything, any negative, as long as you can lose the weight, which can be very dangerous, right? Which is why I think a lot of people end up going on these really extreme diets and like really, really undercutting their calories and dealing with the negatives of that, because the want and the need in their brain to lose the weight no matter what, no matter the consequences, is very high. And a lot of times those consequences are dire, and they're not good, and they're long-term worse than if they were to just chill out a little bit and understand that losing the weight is not the most important thing. It's about how you're doing it. And am I doing this holistically? Is this something that I'm going to be able to sustain for a long time? And I really, really appreciate Beatrice's thought process on this. To me, it shows someone that truly wants to be healthy long-term and truly wants to be in a better place in the future. Right? But again, I'm just a YouTuber. What am I to say? But that's what I'm getting from this video.
To me, it kind of sounds like being sick. Like, not saying like people who are taking this medication are sick. I'm just saying that when you're sick, you oftentimes don't feel like eating. You probably lose some weight. And then all of a sudden when you're not sick anymore, you don't just magically keep that weight off most of the time. Like, you gain it back because you feel like eating again. I see it being like that. I don't know. So like, after doing all this research and seeing how stacked the odds are against people trying to lose weight in any form long term, where does that leave us? My main focus is going to be on keeping the weight off rather than just the weight loss. And of the real life examples that I know of people who have lost the weight, like people that I personally know who have lost weight and kept it off, they change entirely, like not just in a physical appearance. So that kind of has to be like the ultimate mindset, like not just changing in the short term, but it kind of just has to be like, okay, this is just the way that it's going to be from now on. And that might be a difference, because I know that I can lose weight. I've lost significant amount of weight several times in my life. The problem is I always gain it back. Yeah. And to be honest, I have this thing with like a self-destructive tendency that probably needs to be addressed. Because like this last stint when I was doing like the no added sugar thing, which ultimately ended up being like a mainly eating whole unprocessed foods, which ended up working great for me, I got sick, and then I got a bunch of comments from people saying like, oh, you never finish anything, and surprise, surprise, she didn't finish this, or whatever else. All of things that I was personally telling myself, and that's why those comments are hurtful, because I'm already saying that stuff to myself, and then you got other people noticing it too. So
yeah, the comments that hurt the worst are the ones that you feel are kind of true. Like, it's just how it is.
Of course, it becomes true, despite actually getting really sick and losing the weight. But it just kind of like, when something negative happens, I feed into it, and I'm like, yeah, you are a piece of shit. Let's make you really a piece of shit and make you feel worse. Like, there's just something to that I need to not do anymore if I want to actually do this thing. But yeah, that's all for now. Some of you asked how I felt about.
So that's pretty much the whole video, and I do want to make it very clear that this is Beatrice's feelings and this is how she feels. And I think it's important that you, with anything, it's you can always learn from someone's story, but don't feel like this is her saying this is how I pick it up, right? Don't feel like this is her saying you have to feel the same way or anything like that. I think it's important and it's valuable to hear people's perspectives on why they are or not taking something, and everyone is going to have a different feeling, and everyone's going to have a different journey, and what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and why they do those things. But I feel like this conversation is really important, and I am glad that more people are bringing it up and speaking about it honestly, because I feel like so many people, I get so many messages of people feeling like they almost have to take these medications because it's impossible for them to lose weight without it. That for me, is my biggest issue. I have no problem with the medication, but it's become so in the zeitgeist now that everyone feels that they absolutely need it, or losing weight is basically impossible. That's my biggest problem with the way that this stuff is marketed and the way that it's become so popular, is so many people are aware of it, and they feel like, because they've seen those statistics of 95% can't keep the weight off, that they're like, well, it's literally impossible unless I have this thing. And I personally don't believe that. I really liked this video, as you can probably tell. Beatrice, I think you're doing a great job. I'm sorry that you're going through that stuff. It's sadly part of the internet, especially if you're someone that's trying to lose weight on the internet. People aren't the nicest, but I appreciate your candor and I appreciate your honesty. But I'm curious what y'all think down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.